All right, there we go. Let me zoom in. Can you guys see the paper okay once it focuses? Okay. So I'm going to get x by itself for this problem to solve. So I want to get rid of this -7. So in order to do that, I have to use the inverse or the opposite. So the opposite of subtraction is addition. So I'm going to add 7 to get rid of it. But what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So my -7 and my +7 are going to cancel, and I'm left with x equals, and then -3 plus 7 gives me 4. So for this, x equals 4 is my answer. Okay, and for our second bell ringer question, we have 5x equals 30. Does anyone know what the answer to that is? Six, yes, 6 is correct. So it's multiplication that's happening right now. 5 is being multiplied by x. So in order to get x by itself, I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So I'm going to divide by 5 to get rid of the 5. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. 30 divided by 5 gives me 6. So x equals 6 is the answer for number 2. All right. Now we're going to move on to lesson 1.3, which is just kind of the same thing except solving equations with variables on both sides. So does anyone have, before I move on to the lesson, does anyone have any questions about the quiz retake or retaking it or even doing the quiz from Friday? Okay, so I'm going to have office hours again today to do quiz retakes. I think it's at 3:30, possibly. Let me look. Oh, 4 to 5. So today at 4 o'clock, if you want to retake the quiz, join the Google Meet links that's in the chat and we can retake the quiz. All right, so moving on to what we're going to do today is solving equations with variables on both sides. So as you can see, this equation has a variable on the left side and a variable on the right side. So what I'm going to do is show you guys how to solve it to get it to have it as an x equals answer. Once again, if you would like one of these workbooks to work along with me, you can come into the school and pick them up in the office from Mrs. Armenta or Mrs. Tesh, and they will give you one of these workbooks. Okay. So to solve an equation with variables on both sides, you're going to simplify one or both sides of the equation if necessary, then use inverse operations to collect the variable terms on one side and the constants on the other. Then you're going to isolate the variable like we've been doing. So step 1 is to simplify if you can. Step 2 is to get the variables on one side and the numbers on the other. You can choose, you'll get the same answer either both ways. If you put the variables on the left or the right, it doesn't matter. And then you're going to use inverse operations to solve. So for this first problem, we have 10 minus 4x equals -9x. So I'm going to solve for x. So step 1 is to simplify. I can't do this here because there's nothing to simplify. So then step 2 would be to get the variables on one side and the numbers on the other. So I'm going to choose to move my variables to the right side because there's nothing over here. So then it'll just be numbers on the left and variables on the right. But you could definitely move the 9x over here and the 10 over there if you'd like. But for me, I'm going to move it to the other side. So I'm going to do 4x. I'm going to move it to the right side of the equation. In order to do that, I'm going to do the opposite, which is addition. So what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So the negative and positive 4x cancel. I'm left with 10 equals -9 plus 4x, which gives me -5x. Now it's just an equation like we had earlier. So I'm going to do the one step, which would just be to divide to get the x by itself, because these are being multiplied. So the opposite of multiplication is division. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So these 5s are going to cancel, and I'll be left with x equals 10 divided by -5 gives me -2. So x equals negative. And then I can prove that it is a correct answer by taking -2 and putting it into my original equation wherever I see x. So 10. Oh, nope, that's wrong. So if I go 10 minus 4 times -2 equals -9 times -2. 10, and then -4 times a -2 gives me 8. And -9 times a -2 would give me 18. And 18 does equal 18. So 2 is the correct answer. -2, sorry. All right. So that's the first one. Does anyone need me to go over any steps again? All right. So I'm going to move on to this next problem. I'm going to white this out so that I have room. Okay. So this one looks a little bit more complicated compared to the last one, but all it is you're going to simplify and then solve. So we'll do this. I'll do it nice and slow. And if you need me to stop or go over something again, type it in the chat or unmute yourself, okay? So first, step 1 is to simplify one or both sides of the equation. Looking at this, I can simplify both sides of the equation. So I'm going to do that. So 3, everything inside my parentheses is going to get multiplied by 3. So 3 times 3x gives me 9x because 3 times 3 is 9 and the x comes along. Then 3 times a -4 is going to give me -12. So I simplified the left. Now I'm going to simplify the right. I have 1/4, and it's going to multiply by everything inside the parentheses. So 1/4 times 32x gives me 8x. And then 1/4 times 56 gives me 14. Okay, so now my equation looks similar to the first one where it's variables on both sides. So now I want to get my numbers on one side and the variables on the opposite side of the numbers. So what I can do here is I can bring all the variables to the left or I can bring them all to the right. Which one do you think I should do? Variables on the left or variables on the right?
Left.
Okay, I'm going to do the left. Like Javi said, to me, it makes it easier because then my variables will be positive, because if I subtract 8 from both sides, I'll be left with a positive x, where if I subtracted 9, I'd have negatives, and I don't like to deal with negatives if I don't have to. So I'm going to keep it positive to make it a little bit easier. So 9x minus 8x gives me x. The -12 comes along, and then these will cancel, and I'll be left with 14. And this is just a simple one-step equation like we did last week. So I'm going to move the 12 to the other side, but to do that, I have to do the opposite. So negative, the opposite of that is positive. So I'm going to add 12, and what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to both. So 14 plus 12 gives me 26. -12 and a positive 12 cancel out. And then I bring down my x, and x equals 26. Does anyone need me to go over anything again for that one? Okay. So that is kind of what we're going to do today. So let me show you the Google Classroom. Okay. So let me assign this one. So what we're going to be doing this week is, instead of doing more things on Big Ideas Math, we're going to do kind of a review again of 1- and 2-step equations. So If you go to the crime scene investigation without the blue and orange circles next to them, that's just what the document looks like. And then I'm breaking it up so that we don't have to do all of it today. So a crime has been committed by one of the 10 suspects below. You have been brought in as a police consultant. You should analyze the evidence provided to eliminate 9 of the suspects. You'll need to be ready to present your findings to the chief inspector. Good luck. So here's the suspects. And then there's evidence 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So evidence 1 and 2 is just solving 1 and 2 step equations like we've done before. And then evidence 3, which we're going to do today, is solving equations with variables on both sides or combining like terms. So we're going to do evidence 3 in class today. And then on Thursday, we'll do 4. And on Friday, we'll do 5. And then we'll do the results together. So what I did, just kidding, I wasn't even sharing that tab. Dang it. Okay. So here's what it looks like. The crime scene investigation, evidence 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to do 3 today in class. So going back to our Google Classroom, you'll see evidence 1 and 2. Those ones you're going to do on your own. So do those as homework. And then we're using a new website called Teacher Made. So you'll go and click on the website and then you'll log in with your Google account. And then you'll come down here and then I have done X equals Y equals. So you'll just click on it and then type in your answer. So once you're done with all of those, you'll click I'm done. And then it grades it for me, which is super nice because then I don't have to do the grading. So now we have evidence 3, which we're going to do in class today. If you would like to work on your own, you can, but I'm going to do some problems. We'll do some problems together. So if you want to open up that tab and put the answers in as I go over them on the crime scene evidence 3, you can. If not, then just you'll have to do it later. All of this is going to be due Monday at midnight, so don't stress about getting it done before the next class. You have until Monday to do it. So here we have evidence 3. Ooh, let me zoom out. Number patterns. So $12 million was stolen in this crime. All the suspects have stolen money in the past, and with most criminals, the amounts have increased. Eliminate any suspects who would not have at least $12 million. An answer such as X equals 5 represents $5 million. So eliminate any suspects who would not have at least $12 million. So if anyone has under 12, we're going to cross them out because they cannot be the criminal for this crime. So we're going to go ahead and solve these. So let me get out some paper. Okay, so number 1, we have 9x minus 7x equals 28. So what am I going to do for my first step on this equation? So what I talked about earlier with our steps, the step 1 is to combine or simplify the equation. And then step 2 would be get to the numbers on one side, the variables on the other, and step 3 is to solve. So my first step here is going to be simplifying the left side of the equation. Because I have 2 x's, I can simplify them. So 9x minus 7x gives me 2x equals 28. So I've simplified. Now I have to get the variables on one side and the numbers on the other, but it's already set up that way. So step 2 is done. And then step 3, I'm going to solve by doing the inverse to get x isolated by itself. So in order to get x by itself here, am I going to multiply, divide, subtract, or add? Divide, yes. So I'm going to divide by 2 because it's being multiplied, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So the 2's will cancel, and I'll be left with x. 28 divided by 2 gives me 14. So for number 1, x equals 14. So you can put that in teachermade.com on the website, or you can just write these down and do it all later. So x equals 14, that is at least above $12 million because x equals 14 is 14 million. So we can keep suspect 1 because their answer is larger than 12. Okay. Moving on to number 2. I have 2, and then in parentheses, x minus 10 equals 6. So step 1 is going to be to simplify. So to simplify this one, I'm going to distribute the 2 to everything inside the parentheses to simplify it and get rid of the parentheses. So everything in the parentheses will get multiplied by 2. So 2 times x gives me 2x. 2 times negative 10 gives me negative 20. And then the 6 just comes down. Now I have a 2-step equation. I'm going to get the numbers on one side and the variables on the other. So I'm going to choose to bring the numbers to the right and the variables on the left because that way I can the variable's already here and I don't have to move it. So in order to get rid of the 20, I'm going to do the opposite of subtraction, which is addition. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So this 2x just comes down, negative 20 and a positive 20 cancel, and then I'm left with 26. 2x equals 26. I'm going to do division again to get x by itself. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. The 2's will cancel, and I'm left with x equals 13. So the answer to number 2 is x equals 13. Once again, that's larger than 12, so I can keep the suspect in because the number is larger than 12. Does everyone understand, or does anyone need me to go over anything again? Any questions, comments, or concerns? No? From Diego? Perfect. And if you guys have any questions or don't want to ask them right now, feel free to email me or schedule office hours and we can go over it. But for the most part, this should be pretty much review. If you had work keys last year, we kind of did these equations. So if you had work keys last year, or if you did pre-algebra, you kind of did some of this stuff too. Okay, moving on to number 3. So we have 2x plus 3x equals 70. So it's the same kind of problem as number 1, where I'm going to simplify first in order to solve. So what would I simplify here? Yes, Evelyn, good job. So I'm going to simplify 2x and 3x, and 2 plus 3 gives me 5x equals 70. And now it's just a one-step equation. To get the x by itself, it's being multiplied here, 5 by x. So I'm going to divide to get rid of the multiplication. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. And what is 70 divided by 5? Type it in the chat. All right, 70 divided by 5 is 14. So once again, my answer to 3 is x equals 14. 14 is larger than 12, so suspect 3 still remains at large. Okay, number 4. I have the parentheses again. So I want to simplify in order to solve, and then get the variables on one side, the numbers on the other, and then solve. So to do this one, I have 3, and it's going to be multiplied by everything inside the parentheses. So I'm going to multiply 3 by 2x and 3 by a positive 1. So 3 times 2x gives me 6x. 3 times a positive 1 gives me 3. And 87 just comes down. Now I'm going to get my variables on one side and my numbers on the other. So I'm going to move the 3 to the other side of the equation by doing the opposite, which is subtraction. 87 minus 3 gives me 84. So the 3's cancel, and I'm left with 6x equals 84. And 84 divided by 6 to get x alone. And x equals 14. So the answer to number 4 is x equals 14. Okay. Now I'm going to do number 5, unless anyone has any questions. Okay, so I'm going to combine my x's, -6 and a 3 at -6x and a positive 3x gives me -3x equals -15. And then I'm going to solve by dividing both sides by -3 because that's the opposite of multiplication. The 3's cancel. I'm left with x equals. And -15 divided by -3 gives me a positive what? What is the answer to -15 divided by -3? 5. Good job. So now I have x equals 5, which is 5 million. So for number 5, the answer is x equals 5. But any suspect that has less than 12 million couldn't have done the crime. So I know suspect number 5 is not part of the case anymore, so I can cross out suspect 5. All right, now you have 5 problems to do on your own for the evidence 3, so you guys can work on that. We have 4 minutes left in class, so you can try and get some done. If not, it's homework.